Hello everyone. So in last lecture we discussed about how to formulate optimization or mathematical programming problem. So in this course we will mainly worry about solving mathematical optimization problem using either analytical or numerical methods. Now all these optimization methods will require some of the background, some mathematical backgrounds on set, linear algebra, differential calculus. So in the next 1 or 2 lectures we will spend our some time studying about some of the mathematical background needed for this course, and I will try to give you some important result which will be used in this course. So let us start with some mathematical background. We will start with the definition of sets. As we all know, set is a collection of objects which satisfy certain property. So for example, we have a set of natural number which take the value 1, 2, 3 and so on. One could have a set of real number, or one could have, as mentioned here, a set of real number and the elements take the value in the range 1 to 3, 1 and 3 inclusive of the inclusive. So this is the property that need to be satisfied by the element of the set. Now here in this case the property is that the element has to be natural number. So one can define a set using certain property. Now there could be some cases where set doesn't contain any element or object. Such sets are called empty sets and we denote them by using letter phi. Now let us sum operation on sets. Suppose we consider two sets A and B which are part of some universal set U, and the union operation is defined like this, where we take either element of X, element of A or element of B. So this element X will satisfy this property that will be denoted as A and B. Okay, so it will be element which will be part of any of them. Now similarly we will have an intersection of two sets A and B denoted like this. This is A intersection B, where the element of set have to be belong to both the set A as well as B. Then we have the difference between A and B is also called as A minus B. Okay, which means that there will be some element which is part of A but not a part of B set, and it is denoted by backslash. So this is the set of elements of X, which a set of elements of A which do not belong to B. So if you collect all such element of A which do not belongs to B, that will give you difference between A and B. So now we will show this using some figures. So let us consider two sets, set A and set B, which are part of universal set U. So the set A consists of all the elements inside the circle green, and the set B consists of all the elements which are inside the circle blue. So these are the given sets A and B. Now let us look at union operation. So A union B, basically the set of all the elements which either belongs to A or belongs to B. So the shaded region here tell us that this is the union of two sets A and B. The shaded region is the union of two sets A and B. Now let us look at the intersection. Intersection is essentially those elements which belongs to both A and B, both the sets. So you will see that this shaded region here denotes the elements which are the part of A set as well as the part of set B. So this is called as intersection. Now if the intersection of two sets is empty, if intersection of two sets is empty, we say that the sets are disjoint. So for example, set A is somewhere here and set B is on the other side. So, and they do not have anything in common. This is A, this is B, they are part of universal set U. So there is no common element between A and B. So we say that they are disjoint, and for disjoint set we say that the intersection of A and B is null set or empty set. Now let us look at difference between A and B. So the shaded region here denotes those elements of set A which do not belongs to set B. So this is called difference between A and set B. Similarly, if you want to find out difference between B and A, it will be the other part of the shaded region, these elements of B which are not part of A. So this is called difference between set A and B, and this is called difference between B and A, and this backslash denotes the difference. So suppose we have two sets A and B which are given like this. Now we say that A is subset of B, that is every element of A is also a member of B, and we write this as A subset of B. Now if so happens that there exist some elements of B which are not part of A, okay, so these are elements which are not part of A. So if such a things happen, then we say that A is strict subset of B. So if A is subset of B, and if there exist some element Y which belongs to B such that Y doesn't belongs to A, then we write A as subset of B, strict subset of B. So strict subset will be denoted by this sign. So you can consider it as greater, less than or equals to. If both are equals, then we will say A is a subset of B. But if some elements of B are not available in A, then it's a strict subset of B. Now we will look at supremum and infimum of a set. Now let us consider a real number. Consider a set of real number, or let us consider a subset of real number. Now that set is said to be bounded above, and if there is a real number Y such that every element of X of A is less than Y, every element of X of A is less than Y. Now among all the possible Y's, if you find the smallest possible real number such that X is less than or equals to Y for every X element X in the set A, then it is called least upper bound or supremum of A, and it is denoted by sub X such that X belongs to A. Okay. Now along similar line, one can define what is called greater lower bound or infimum. So in that case, one has to look for the element Y such that X is greater than or equals to Y for every X belonging to A. and among them, if you find out the largest number such that x is greater than or equals to y for every x belongs to A, then it is called greatest lower bound or infimum. Now let us take some example. So let us consider a case set of A where 1 is the element of set satisfying this property, where 1 is less than or equals to x and x is less than 3. Now, so which means that we include 1 in this set but we will not include 3 in this set. But any real number less than 3 is and greater than or equals to 1 is permitted to be in this set. Now if you take a supremum of this set, now any number greater than supremum of the set, any number greater than 3 is the upper bound. 4, 5, even 3 are the upper bound for this set. But then among all those numbers, what is the least upper bound? The least upper bound or supremum is 3. And if you will note that 3 doesn't belongs to the set A. So supremum need not to belong to the set. And similarly one can define the infimum of this set. It turned out that infimum, that is the greatest lower bound of the set, is 1. That is, in this case it does belong to set. So supremum and infimum, they need not to belong to set, they can belong to set, depend on the definition of set. Now we move on to the concept of vector space. So we have so far studied the sets. So some of those concepts would be useful in studying the vector space. Now a non-empty set S is called vector space if it satisfies certain property. So let us look at some of those properties in detail. Now for any two numbers x and y for the set S, so first of all there is an operation of plus, which is defined and such that x plus y is in set S. Now further, this addition operation should be commutative, which means x plus y should be equals to y plus x, and this sum should also have a property of associative, should be associated. That means if you sum y plus z, then resultant is added in x, it will give the same result if you add x plus y and resultant added to z. Okay, so x and y belongs to set S, and the addition operation x plus y will also belongs to set S, and commutative and associative hold. That is our first property. Now further, there should exist an element in S which is called, let us denote by 0. So 0 such that x plus 0 is equals to 0 plus x for all x in the set S. So this 0 is nothing else but identity for addition. So that means if you add that identity element to this x, to any element x, you will get x itself. Similarly, there exists for any x belonging to S, there exists y such that x plus y is equals to 0. So this y is called as additive inverse of x. So the element, when it is added with its additive inverse, you will get identity for addition. Now for any x belonging to S and alpha is belongs to set of real number, then alpha x should be defined and that should be also in set S. And once this one scalar multiplied by x should gives you x for every x in set, so this is called multiple identity, multiplicative identity. So this is identity for 0 is the identity for addition and 1 is the identity for the multiplication. Now here I have mentioned alpha belongs to R. In fact, for a vector space, alpha can come from any field. But for this course, we will restrict ourselves only to the field of real number. So that is why I have mentioned alpha belongs to R. Now further, for any x and y, in the set S and alpha and beta from the field of real number. So if you find out x plus y and multiply by alpha, so it is same as finding alpha x plus alpha y. So multiplication distributed over addition. Okay. Similarly, alpha plus beta combined together and multiplied with x is same as alpha x plus beta x. And if you multiply a vector x by beta and then again multiply with vector a is same as multiplying x with multiplication of alpha and beta together, then multiplying them with vector x. So all these properties should hold where x and y or any two element of set S and alpha and y they belongs to the field of real number. Now these element of the set S, they are called vectors. So the vector space is the space formed using vector. Now there are some standard example for vector space. For example, the space of real number, n dimension space of real number, okay, 2-dimensional space of real number. These are some standard example of vector space. Okay, so elements in S are called vectors. Now here are some notation that we will use in this course. Of course, some of them I have already used, but let me specify them in detail. So R denotes the vector space of real number. Rn is a vector space of real n-dimensional vectors. So n-dimensional vector x can be written as column vector consisting of n elements. Now each of these elements is a real number. That's why x belongs to Rn, which means xi belongs to real number. And there are such n such xi's where I is going from 1 to n. Now the transpose of vector will be denoted by row vector. So the vector will typically be denoted by vector by a column. You will denote a vector by a column and transpose of a vector is shown by a row vector. Now there are some special cases where we have zero vector. So zero vector is a vector which contains all the 0, and the vector 1 which contain all the 1s. Sometime we will use letter E to denote this one vector. Now the number of element here depends on the situation, so you have not specify exactly the number of elements here. So based on the context, one can decide what is the number of element in 0 and 1 vector. Now if S and T are the vector spaces S such that S is the subset of T, then S is called subspace of T. So here is one question: what are the possible subspace of R square? Now if you look at the possible subspace of R square, then origin is a subspace of R square. R square itself is a subspace of R square. And then what we have is a set of line which passes through the origin. So this is one line which passes through the origin, that is vector space, which is subspace of R square. Now it is easy to characterize our subspace. You can think of it as a space where if suppose x and y are two vectors in a vector space and alpha and beta any two real number coming from the field of real numbers, then alpha x plus beta y should always belong to subspace. Now going by this definition, you will realize if you put y equals to minus x and alpha and beta equals to 1, in this definition you will get x minus x is equals to 0. So 0 should always belong to subspace and 0 vector should always belongs to subspace. So sometime note that this is called linear subspace. Now if you translate this subspace, that it is no longer remaining a subspace, because the origin do not line that such space. This line doesn't cross origin, so this is not subspace anymore. It is affine space. So affine space is such translation of linear space, is just a translation of linear space. Now in R3, if you want to write down the possible subspace, so again R3 itself is the subspace. Then you have 0 origin form of subspace of R3, a set of lines passing through origin and a set of planes passing through the origin. These all will form the subspace of R3. Now each subvector space is spanned by its set of vectors. Now let us look at what is called a spanning set. So a set of vectors x1, x2 till xk is called span the vector S. If any vector x belongs to S, can be represented as a linear combination of all these vectors. So represent as linear combination of those vectors where alphas are some real coefficient. So such a set is called spanning set of a vector set. Now here is an example. You have 5 vectors given here. A1 which is 1 0, A2 which is 1 1, A3 which is 0 1, A4 which is 1 0 minus 1 0, A5 which is minus 1 minus 1. So these are 5 vectors in 2-dimensional space and they span the 2-dimensional space of real number. So what it means is that you take any vector in this space of in 2-dimensional space, of real number, now that vector can always be represented as linear combination of each of these vectors. Now linear combination, what we saw, it may happen that we not require all the vectors. Sum of alphas could be zeros. Sum of alphas could be zeros when we specify a linear combination. So for example, if we take A2, A2 itself represented as A1 plus A3, and we do not require A4 and A5. So with them we will multiply with 0. So we will use A1 and A3 to represent A2. If you will sum, you will get 1 and 1. So it will get 1 1. Okay. So similarly one can work out other example of vectors which can be represented using any of these vectors. Now obviously the next question would be that what is the minimum size of spanning side that is needed to span a given vector space. So it is clear that if you are just given one vector A1, you can't be used to represent any vector in two-dimensional space. On the another hand, if you given say 1 and 3, so we can represent any vector in two-dimensional space. Then what is the role of A2 and A4 and A5? So there are redundancy in this set of vector which span the space R0, R square. So we have to study notion of linear dependence for this purpose. Now a set of vector x1 to xk is said to be linearly independent if the linear combination of those xi is equals to 0. Means each of the real coefficient alpha are 0 for all i's going from 1 to k. Now if they are not linearly independent, then they are said to be linearly dependent, and one of them can be written as linear combination of other. So this is important definition of linear independent of vector. So linear combination of those vector is 0 implies that each of the real coefficient alpha has to be 0. So such a vector is called linearly independent. So if we look at the vectors A1 and A2, so A1 is 1 and 0 and A2 is 1 1, so they are linearly independent. So one can show that if we take alpha 1 A1 plus alpha 2 A2, that will be equals to 0, will result in alpha and alpha 2 is equals to 0. On the other hand, if you take alpha 1 A1 and A4, so A1 is 1 0 and A4 is minus 1 0, they are linearly dependent because one can easily see that A4 can be written as minus of A1. Okay. So A1 plus A4 is equals to 0. So this will happen when alpha 1 is equals to 1 and alpha 2 is equals to 1. So sigma of A1 plus A4 is equals to 0 essentially means that the vectors are linearly dependent. Now a set of vectors is said to be basis for a vector space if they are linearly independent and span that set span S. So if you look at the previous example, A1 and A2 are linearly independent, and if A1 and A2 also span the space S, that means if you suppose any vector x in two-dimension space can be written as linear combination of A1 and A2 turns out to be basis for the space. You will see that A1 and A2 forms a basis. Similarly, A1 and A3 forms a basis. So this shows that bases are not unique. So I can have A1, A2 as a basis, A1, A3 as a basis, A4, A3 as a basis, then A2, A5 as a basis, and A3, A2 as a basis, and so on. So the only thing that I have to ensure is that they are linearly independent and those vectors should span the space. So as we show that vector space need not to have a unique basis. One can have a multiple bases, but suppose if you fix bases, say x1 to xk for a space vector S, then any x vector can be uniquely represented using x1 to xk. So if you fix the basis of bases, a vector is uniquely represented. So alpha 1, alpha 2 and alpha k will be unique representation of x with respect to its space x. Now if you take two bases of vector space, they will have same cardinality. So the number of bases could be same. They should be same for a given vector space, and the dimensional dimension of vector space S is the cardinality of a basis. So the set of linear independent vector, maximum linear independent vector we span thus set S, that is basis. Then the cardinality of the set is called dimension. Now when we look at the example of two dimension space, we saw that A1 and A2 or even A1, A3 are enough to represent any vector in two-dimensional space, and further A1 and A2 or even A1 and A3 are linearly independent. So they form bases. So dimension of this space is 2 because they can form bases of size 2. Similarly, extended those idea of to high dimension space, we can say that dimension of vector space Rn is n. Now if EI denotes n dimensional vector whose ith element is 1 and remaining element is 0, then the set E1, E2, En forms the standard basis of Rn. So in each of these ES, the ith element is 1 and remaining elements are 0, and they form a standard basis. So if you look at two-dimensional example A1 and A3, they form a standard basis of R. Now a basis or a vector set S is maximal independent set of vectors which span the space S. So it is a maximum independent set which span the set. So if you add anything, any extra vector to this basis, then it becomes a set of linearly dependent vectors. So adding any extra thing to set will make it linearly independent. One more remark about this basis, that a basis for a vector space S is minimal spanning set of vector which span the space S. So this is minimum spanning set S. So if you take out any element from the set, those vector space can't be, any element for the vector space can't be constructed using remaining elements. So these are the necessary element to span the S. So these are the two important concepts, or you can say necessary element to span the space S. So maximum independent set of vectors which span S and minimal spanning sets. So you can't add anything because it will become dependent, and you can't remove anything from that set of bases because it will not span the space. Now after having studied this vector and vector space, we'll look at some another preliminaries. That's all for today's lecture. Thank you.